Why it's not? Woo. Hello, everybody, on a special edition of Fill in the Blanks. It's Tenitra, Batiste, and Jarvis Davis. And you may be saying, well, why is it a special edition? Because, dare we say it, at least in Falcons land, we have not had any shakeups since the beginning of this show over a year ago, quite like the shakeup that happened on Sunday. So, as you guys are well aware, 1997 since the Falcons started a season 0-5, and it seems like that was the tipping point. That was the tipping point for Arthur Blank and the Falcons organization to finally decide that the Dan Quinn, Thomas Dimitroff run had to come to an end. So that was about 3.5 years in the making when you look at what their record has looked like really since the Super Bowl, but ultimately speaking, as much of a slow burn as that decision was, that organization moved very swiftly to make the decision on who they wanted to put in Dan Quinn's place, as well as Thomas Dimitroff. That said, Jarvis, we learned on Monday that Raheem Morris was the coordinator, if you will, who was selected to serve as an interim head coach for the Falcons. Of course, we were thinking about the possibilities and knew that there were the possibilities of Dirk Cutter, as well as OC, as well as assistant head coach Jeff Ulbrich. Ultimately, Raheem got the nod, as well as Rich McKay, who'll be taking over day-to-day operations. Initial reactions, of course, because we had a chance both to listen in to what Arthur Blank and Rich McKay had to say on Monday, as well as what Raheem Morris had to say on today. So let's start with Arthur Blank and Rich McKay. Some of my initial reactions there were that one thing is you could see and you could hear, and in the body language, you could hear in the words and the feedback to the answers to the media's questions that they are confident that whatever success looks like, however that corner can be turned, with Raheem Morris is that guy, because he has, and what you heard consistently was about the experience on both sides of the ball, about the experience being a head coach previously, about the fact that the players respect him, so he hasn't lost the locker room if anybody else had. And in addition to that, they believe that he's the guy that can hit the ground running, and maybe whatever it is that he had that really allowed him to be the architect for the 6-2 back half of the season last year, he can put back into motion even this year with everything we're looking at in terms of what's been the challenge on defense. That was one of the things that I took away. But before I go too far into the other things I took away, Jarvis, I want to pull you in to say maybe what was one of your main takeaways, starting with what we heard from Arthur and Rich.
I think one of the main things is, and a lot of people have been talking about it, I think is the fact that we didn't hear the Matt Ryan is going to be a Falcon for life. In response to a question about whether or not Matt is going to be able to be a Falcon to the age. He said he wants to play till he's at least 40 years old. That's about 4 or 5 years from now. And we don't know who the coach is going to be at this point. And we also don't know whether or not they want to have Matt for the next 4 or 5 years. So that's for Arthur to say that decision is entirely left up to those people. That general manager and head coach. I think that says a lot about where this organization is and where they are going to be moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Jarvis. And just to kind of bring that into the bigger conversation that was also happening during the press conference, Matt was the byproduct of that, but that conversation was started by, well, what are you going to do on and off the field? You and I have asked that question before. Even our buddy Bum McClure probably asked it as eloquently, as directly as we'd heard anybody last week, which was in terms the point blank question of, are you going to make any changes? Are you going to take Isaiah Oliver as an example off the field and make changes because it's simply not working? So that's where that conversation started. What changes can be made off the field? What changes are going to be made off the field, and who's going to be responsible and allowed to make it? And it was very, very clear that they were comfortable. They had mentioned that they had just spoken to Raheem before they hopped on the call with the press to let him know that you got the green light to do what you want. And then moments, Jarvis, after we hung up that Zoom call is when we got the notification that, hey, Ben Kotwika gone, Jeff Ulbrich, DC, Dirk Cutter, you get to stay in place. And Will Hardinger, you get to move into running backs coach. So Raheem move swiftly, like Blank and McKay move swiftly to put him in place. We're liking what we're seeing there. And also, another thing that I heard was, as it relates to Matt Ryan, he was the name that was mentioned in the quote unquote soundbite from Arthur Blank. But Jarvis, did you hear, as that conversation expanded and we started talking about trading off to amass draft picks, I heard an openness and a willingness to do that as well. Not just Matt. Like, it doesn't start and stop. It may start with him, but it may not stop there.
That's another thing too, because when I hear that, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a team that's super aggressive. Shoot, even Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers to say, you know what?
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation about 11. Let's
Yeah.
see, what are you willing to do? What do you want for Julio Jones? And is that feasible? And the 49ers are gonna have to figure out, all right, is that feasible for us? So, and I think Rich McKay was very explicit in his response, was saying that, hey, we're not going to be making all the phone calls, but we'll sure accept them.
Yeah, and that's what,
you know what I'm saying? So
it was very clear that no, we're not making the phone calls, but we're taking the phone calls. And that's a very good point you make, Jarvis, because not only going back to Matt Ryan, that's a call that you could see Kyle Shanahan and the organization making from San Fran, not just for number 11, but possibly for number 2, because as we saw on Sunday, Jimmy Garoppolo is not Jimmy G right now. He's still pretty banged up. And so they
some would say, will make an argument for that Jimmy G wasn't nobody in the first place. I'm one of those people. But I didn't think he was all that in the first place. So I mean, I just thought that whatever the little bit of success that he has had since he's been in San Fran, I think a lot of it goes to Kyle Shanahan, and we all know the type of success that he had here with Matt and being an MVP and going on to the Super Bowl. But I think the one thing, though, I think people have to kind of take in consideration and remember this. Take a look at the landscape of the NFC South.
Yes.
You have an aging quarterback in Tom Brady. We all know what he is. More than likely, there's a good chance that Tampa is going to win this division, but are they looking good doing it? Not really.
Right.
And how long is Tom Brady going to be around? That's what you got to ask yourself. How long is Drew Brees going to be around?
Right? And they're not looking good. Yeah, that's a shaky 3-2 that they both have.
And is Teddy Bridgewater a reason to just tear it all down and rebuild? Right. No, I don't think so. So I think you got, in the short term, it may not be a good idea to get rid of Matt Ryan. In the short term, it may not be a good idea to get rid of Julio Jones next year.
Right.
So all of those things you have to take into place before people start trying to just say, you know what, let's just go ahead and start it over and tear it down.
Right. And I want to say this too, Jarvis. We've never been, nor are we now, on the we hate Matt Ryan, get him out of town bandwagon. That's not who we are. We actually have a lot of respect for what it is that Matt does on the field. But what you're looking at right now is no different than a situation that many franchises have found themselves in at some point, trying to figure out, okay, are we going to just strip this bare, or almost strip it bare, and start over, rebuild for the next 2 to 3 years, and therefore use that route, draft, mostly through the draft, but through free agency as well, to rebuild this product into a Super Bowl contender? So that's really where the conversation comes from. It stems from what we've seen, you and I, up close for 3 of the last 5 games, and what we've seen remotely in Matt Ryan. Something is off there, whether it's the velocity or whether it's the accuracy or both. We've seen that it's just been off these last few games, and it just begs the question, hey, you're in your mid-30s. You're still good, just maybe not as great as you once were. So is this the time where maybe if we can still get something for you, we go ahead and try to trade you and try to get something for you? This is an interesting one, and I think this is important to you and I as well, is the fact that the organization made the decision to say, hey, look around, look across the landscape and see what looks good for your staff in terms of what the definition of success was. Because it's just like Arthur and Rich said yesterday, and you and I will move on to what Raheem said today. but it's about winning. You just point blank need to get back to winning. There's no philosophy. There's no deep soliloquy type situation. Just win a darn game. That's
Right.
by any means necessary. Win a game. And Raheem, if you're that guy, we'll talk this piece and then we'll move on to what Ra had to say today. If you're that guy, the Falcons will be the organization that looks to give you an opportunity, not just a chance, and throw anything at you, personnel, etc., and say, hey, good luck, if we make you our head coach, but really give him, as Arthur Blank said, an unprecedented 11 games to show what he's worth so that he can be that guy in consideration for the Falcons or even for another organization to return as a permanent head coach. So that's one thing I want to talk to you about as well before we move on, is the legitimacy of him getting this shot to be the Falcons head coach or putting himself in position to be one elsewhere, or the possibility that the Falcons will be the team that finally pulls the trigger on a diverse candidate like an Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is evident here is that he's going to get a legitimate opportunity because, like you said, he has 11 games, like guaranteed. He brought that up. He mentioned that today, that I have 11 games as the head coach of this team. So whether or not how he does in those 11 games is going to determine whether or not they remove the interim tag and he becomes the head coach. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to get a legitimate shot to be the head coach because I don't think he would have been put in place if they didn't want to see what he was and what he can do. Because I know that Arthur Blank really likes Raheem Morris. I like Raheem Morris. You see the leadership. You see the risk. I know people throw this term around a lot and say that, oh, he has the respect of the players. But let's talk about what that actually means. Because players, it takes a lot for players, NFL players specifically, to have that respect for you. That in order to gain that respect from guys like that, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be a teacher because real players, good players, great players, they love guys that they can learn from. And Raheem Morris is a guy that they can learn from. He is a teacher. He can teach you whether you play whether you're the kick return guy on kickoff return or you're the starting quarterback. There is something that he can give you to let you know how you can be better. And that is a great quality to have as a head coach. It's not necessarily, being a defensive minded guy, or I can't even call him a defensive minded guy because he's coached on offense before. He's coached wide receivers before. That's one thing that I was just fascinated by the type of experience that he has had as a coach. He was head coach at a very young age.
32, if I remember
32,
correctly.
32 years old. I could imagine being a head coach of an NFL team at 32 years 32, old. That is right. So those are definitely going to be some learning experiences, and he's going to be able to carry what he learned then to where he is now. And all of those things are going to be something that I feel like he's going to have a really good shot. And I think that Arthur loves the hot name. He went from going back to Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino was this rock'em shock'em type offense that just throwing up points all over the place. He ran a pro offense back then, and he was just a guy that people should talk to. And Arthur Blank did that. So I think Eric Bieniemy is going to have a legitimate shot, at least an interview. And I want to say this too, just to kind of throw another name out there. I think a guy like a Louis Riddick from ESPN. I think he's a guy they should talk to as well. Whether or not he's a serious candidate, that could be that's up for discussion. But I think it's somebody that who's been in this organization before as a player, and we all know the type of knowledge from a personnel standpoint, valuation standpoint that he has. I think combining those things together, I think you maybe have something. There may be something there that the Falcons need to take a look at.
And then you think about the symposium that took place, the quarterback symposium that took place this past summer, and that's something that the Falcons certainly have supported the last few years. And I'll say one of the higher profile attendees was the offense coordinator from Clemson, I think Tony Elliott. And Tony, that's a name that's kind of being bantered around as well. And again, like you and I have said before, we'll say it again here, it's about a real opportunity. We asked that question of Arthur Blank and Rich McKay yesterday, not just a chance, but giving a true opportunity where you have the tools and the resources to be able to be the head coach that helps a team and a franchise contend for a championship. That said, we switch over to Rod. Today, we had an opportunity to speak to him for the first time as the interim head coach, although many of us kind of chuckled last week in saying how stately and how head coachish he kind of looked when he approached the podium. But really,
he was getting some good practice in. Let's go ahead and say that. Now, you can say it, it's all right. Like he knew what was going down. I'm not saying. Well, let me hold on before what I just said the wrong way. He knows that's just who he is.
That's him. Yeah,
he doesn't have to put on and try to be a certain thing or try to be a head coach. That's just who he is. He's that type of guy. He's that my team, we should be able to do this. My guys, like he just owns that role, that leadership role that he has exhibited throughout his time here in Atlanta. So let me get that out the way. I'm not saying that he knew Dan Quinn was gonna get fired and he was practicing his speeches and all that stuff. No, I'm not saying that.
He was ready because he stayed ready.
He was ready. He was very prepared for this situation. And like I said, given all of his past experiences, it's definitely prepared him for this.
Understandably so. Two of the things that he said that I think really caught many of us, I want to mention one of them, and maybe you can share the other one, but that was the question of philosophy. I asked this question to Arthur Blank and Rich McKay yesterday, and then it was followed up today, which is basically, hey, you've been with the Falcons, you were there through the entire Dan Quinn regime. So is this going to be more of the same? How's it going to be different? What's your message? And he basically said, my message is simple. It's winning by any means necessary. And you pretty much have to put your foot on the necks of the opponents, keep it there, and end a game. And in that soundbite, Jarvis, it was succinct, but it was so powerful because that's where you kind of draw the distinction. Not a lot of platitudes, not a lot of slogans, just real simple. I'm gonna put my foot on the gas, and I'm not taking it off until the end of the game when we have a W. And I do think that you're going to see, even though he's been in the regime, even though he has some philosophies, you're going to start to see an evolution of the difference and the differentiation between, say, a Raheem Morris and a Dan Quinn. And I see Vincent Greer is co-signing on that for us as well. Thank you, Vincent. We appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, I think that's the number one thing. I think it's all about perspective, right?
Yes.
Because I know my mindset, what I focus on, what I speak on, and the things that the people that I talk to, all of that determines where I am. And where he was in his organization was the defensive coordinator. So for people to sit up there and think that he's going to rule in a sense, just like Dan Quinn, I think you kind of selling him short, and what his capabilities are. Because I know last year when his team they turned it around, being out there at practice and seeing how he was just working with everybody. He talks to everybody. And like I said, like everybody, he's talking to that third string corner, like, hey, this is what you need to do. All right. I saw what you did on that particular play, but here's how I need you to do it in order for you to be successful. Those are the type of things that are those hands-on guys. Those are the qualities that you look for in a head coach. A guy that can put his hands on everybody and reach and teach everybody. So all of those things come into play when you talk about why he was chosen to be the interim head coach. This is not by chance. There's a reason why Dirk Cutter isn't the interim head coach. We know he has head coaching
who was the assistant head coach.
Right, exactly. It's a reason why Jeff Olbrick is where he is, and nothing against Jeff, Coach Olbrick, but I think that it's clear who that guy was going to be when Dan Quinn was let go. So, but yeah, so for all of those reasons, I don't think things are going to stay the same.
Right.
If now whether or not they work,
Their
we shall
results,
see.
yeah.
The results are going to tell whether or not they work or not. But I definitely don't see things going the same exact way they went before.
Agreed.
I think Rock can make those hard decisions, and that's what Dan Quinn's downfall.
Yeah, because I think what was most encouraging for me yesterday, and of course we never want to see anybody lose their livelihood, but the most important thing and most encouraging thing to me yesterday was Ben Cotweek is gone. He's gone.
Yeah.
Because we always said that
was
he
clear.
was he was he was not the answer for special teams, not even close. And to see him go away, it was the perfect thing. Hey, we're going to take one question from Vincent Greer before we move on, because listen, you got two Braves fans here that need to talk a little Braves before we wrap this thing up. But Vincent asks a great question. Do you think they should tank the season? And Jarvis, you got to be so careful with a purposeful tanking, if you will. There are a number of ways that you can go about putting yourself in the right position to get the draft pick or picks that you want to be a player in free agency. And Arthur Blank said yesterday that they've never been afraid to go right up to the top of the salary cap, which unfortunately is going to take a hit next year because of the pandemic. But ultimately speaking, they'll spend how they have to spend. They will negotiate until they get who they want and what they want. I don't know about tanking in the NFL. It seems to me like tanking works in one league and one league only, and that's the NBA. I haven't seen it work anywhere else. And also, I don't think the mind.
I mean, but before you go on to that, so let's talk about this thing, right? So think about what we're asking, or what we're asking guys to do. We're asking guys to essentially not do their job.
Right. That was going to be my point.
Put bad film out there.
That was going to be my point. Yep.
For one guy.
Right.
For one guy. Yeah. And what if that one guy is to replace you?
Yes.
Hello, Matt Ryan. So if the Falcons get the '1 overall pick, you think Matt Ryan is going to say, you know what? I'm going to take one for the team.
Right.
I'm gonna throw these interceptions. I'm gonna not go run the right plays that the coach tells me to run. I'm not gonna check out of this pass when I know I can run the football on this particular play. No, because here's the thing, whether or not these guys are on this roster next year is going to be determined for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. And
or another roster.
Oh yeah, they can be on another. Whether or not they're going to be on another roster next year, just like you said.
Paid for that roster,
how much I'm going to get paid to be on my next roster? Because think about it. I know Tad McKinley is out, but think about his situation. This dude is a free agent next year.
Yep.
This is what, and he said this himself coming into the season. Whether or not how he plays this year can determine whether or not he's going to be in the NFL anymore.
Period. Yeah,
so he understands what it is. So he doesn't care about trying to get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. They don't give two whats about that. Tell Grady Jarrett the doggone not play hard. Come on now, think about what we're saying. That's not going to happen.
And it doesn't happen in this league, because in the NBA, you also have the ability for coaches to pull players here and there, decide this player won't play, that sort of thing. Football's a violent game. So you're going out there and giving a half effort for the sake of getting a player for a team that you may or may not be on, because it's going to be a player. That's really all you're tanking for. You're tanking for Tua, you're tanking for Trevor. You're really just tanking for a player most of the time. I don't see where these guys have ever shown that they want to put their bodies on the line and their livelihoods on the line to that extent. And it's also a little bit different because you're dealing with more players. So you're basically asking 22 people every day. And that's just the ones that start. That doesn't take into consideration special teams or the ones who may come in situations, right? Our situational players or for certain schemes, that's a lot to ask. And it really kind of does not happen. And the thing about it too is the NBA, since the early days of, with the Spurs, people don't realize this. I mean, It's kind of how they got David Robinson. That's kind of how they got, Tim Duncan. They originated the tanking because of load management. That is just not something that's feasible in other leagues to the degree that it is feasible there. But listen, we only have a few minutes left, and we thank you guys so much for coming in. Shout out to Sean Thompson for reminding us, it's the NBA and what they do. Load management is what they can do, is what they do, is who they are. But we want to talk a little bit about the Braves, man. Oh man, it was a typical roller coaster in the NLCS that it always is. If you cover the Braves, if you are a fan, I found myself, it was like the total opposite of Sunday. Sunday night, I found myself going back and forth between Seahawks and Vikings, and I would kind of check into the NBA game, right? Because I wanted to see, LeBron, are you going to get it? Like, because you made me mad Friday night when you guys did close out in Game 5. I checked in. Last night, even though from New Orleans, so I'm always going to look to see what the Saints are doing. Also, we have to be on the lookout for what's going on in the NFC South, so I'm checking that out. But Jarvis, I'm sitting on pins and needles, walking back and forth, toggling back and forth on that TV because the Braves were like, man, they had us on a string. I mean, you get a run in the first inning, and then we see nothing. But shout out to the brilliance of both pitching staffs, because Walker Buehler did his thing as well. Shout out to Max Fried and what he was able to do. Had a high pitch count. I think he had like 29 pitches in that first inning. And to come out of that and stick around for 6 solid innings, 9 strikeouts, just giving up 1 run. And then that bullpen did it again. And then, of course, the Braves finally let us off the hook in the top of the ninth and went stupid.
It's so amazing. Like, I like watching this team now. Like, it is hard for me to hide my fandom. And now, like, I've just let it go. Like,
I don't care.
It's clear as day. I represent this city all day. Like, this is me. This is who I am. And the Braves the Braves are my first love. That was my first sport. Playing baseball, that was my first sport, and I fell in love with this team. During the 90s, during those runs, and I think Vincent brings up a good point. Pitching, it is all about pitching, and it's so ironic that coming into the season, that was the biggest question mark. Now you got Ian Anderson and Kyle Wright coming around towards the end of the year. And shoot, man, when you talk, I held on to Max Fried before for a reason. Max Fried, think about the guys that he's gone up against. Trevor Bauer is pretty much got the Cy Young wrapped up, right? He pretty much has that Cy Young award wrapped up. And you could probably make a case for him to be an MVP candidate. And Max Fried is going against those guys, and he's been matching those guys pitch for pitch. And Walker Buehler is probably one of the most well-known guys in MLB.
He wore the Braves out last year.
Mowed them down. like we know what he's capable of, and for to have a guy to go up against a guy like that, and Max Fried, and just match him, like, I could do that too. I'm about to mow your guys down too. Like, it's just amazing to me. And then, and I even tweeted this out during the game. All the Braves have to do is get to the opposing team's bullpen. You know why? Because the Braves bullpen is better than yours. And I don't care who they're playing. The Braves spent money, what was it, like $55 million to shore up their bullpen, because that was a big issue last year. Like, I think it's time to go ahead and give Alex Anthopoulos the kudos.
Giving
them flowers now. Like, exactly. Perfect way to put it. Give him his flowers right now, because that particular move in particular, could possibly be the reason why the Braves win the World Series
easily. And if you think about it, Jarvis, granted, it's just one game in the NLCS. We get that, but it was such a statement, and it really showed all three sides of who the Braves are, because you got to see what you needed to
win
see
in so many ways. That's what makes it so dangerous.
Exactly. And then everybody was saying, "Ooh, that Globe Life Stadium, you can't really hit it out of the ballpark." Oh, really?
Yep.
Braves kind of did that. But also, they showed you how they can get players on base. And other than, they did strand 10 runners. We get that. That's something that that's kind of, you got to live with that with the Braves.
That's the game. Yeah. That's the game. But this team, we're used to that.
Exactly. Like, been there, done that. It doesn't matter. We've learned to live with it. But you do have them showing last night how they can get those runs by any means necessary. So yeah, you saw a solo shot to begin the game with Freddie Freeman. You saw a 2-run shot by Ozzie Albies, but you saw some solid hitting. You saw a double that was able to drive Acuna in. And you also, and I say this all the time, and I'm going to beat this drum until I can't beat it anymore. If defense wins basketball, and defense wins in football, even though you've got to have your offense there for you as well. You always talk pitching and you always talk hitting. Defense in Major League Baseball doesn't get enough credit. I'm telling you what the Braves defense is able to do. That darn Ozzie Albies play last night. Unreal. I had to watch it over and over again. So yeah, just for them to be hitting on all cylinders, and just to wrap up, hey, look, do we believe? Absolutely, because those guys look just like we thought they would last night. Like Atlanta, I ain't never scared. They're not scared of the Dodgers. And you, as a former professional athlete, know that that's half the battle. So whether they get to the promised land this year and win it, or whether they get there next year, shout out to Alex Anthopoulos and what that organization has done to put them in position to be contenders for the next few years. Listen, guys, we got 2 minutes before we got to wrap this thing up. And we would be remiss if we did not at least give love to the fact that a lot of teams start a year and they're the odds-on favorite for all of the reasons that the Lakers and LeBron James were. But to actually finish what you started is in the midst of a pandemic, being in a bubble for 3.5 months, players coming up and down with this injury or that injury that may have threatened to sideline them for the postseason, and for you to actually finish the job. I just wanted to shout him out. And Jarvis, I was so mad because I was on Twitter Sunday night and I didn't want to text you that late, but I was like, what's that word that you use that I'm going to start using again? I'm because I love ozone, so I use that when I'm on 92.9 for your Marcelo Zeno. But you had the most powerful term for LeBron James. You said, call MJ who he is, call him the GOAT. That's okay. What do you call LeBron James? I love it.
I call LeBron James the Black Panther because I think it encompasses all of what he's been able to accomplish so far.
Yes.
Because let's not Michael Jordan's career ended a long time ago.
Yeah.
LeBron James' career is still going on, and we're already having these conversations about how he measures up to Michael Jordan.
Yes.
But just think about all the things that he's done. I know we got to get out of here, but
yeah, we do.
Just from starting the schools, what he's doing and putting monies into so they can be able to vote.
Yes.
And his name is being put in the same sentence as Michelle Obama about all the initiatives that he has put together. And he's empowered these players of today to say, you know what? I have the juice. I'm going to play where I want to play. And y'all going to have to acquiesce to my demands.
Yep.
And some people may think that's a little, butthole-ish, but I don't think so. It's just it's putting the power into
and knowing your worth.
And knowing your worth. Like LeBron James has done that for an entire generation of players. Yeah. Like so please understand, Michael Jordan can have that GOAT label. Yeah. He can have it. It's all good. You keep that, MJ. But guess what? LeBron James is the Black Panther.
Yes,
and it means a lot more than just on the court accomplishments, because LeBron is so much more than that. He is so much more than what he's been able to accomplish on the court, which is a lot, by the way.
It's a lot. Yeah,
absolutely. Talking about championships with 3 different teams and being the top 2 player on all of those teams.
Right.
So that's a lot. It says a lot. And we talking about year 17 as well. So, but shout out to LeBron James. He's not the GOAT. He's not the GOAT. Black Panther.
Black Panther, all day, every day. Well, listen, guys, we appreciate your time, but the party doesn't have to stop here. It's just kind of on pause until Saturday. So
Yes.
Jarvis and I will continue the party on 92.9 The Game. It is we'll call it our inaugural show over there, but you guys know we've been doing it. We've been holding this down for about a year and a half here on podcast as well as in the studio before COVID. So Jarvis, I think we'll be on, I know it's in the game until about 9 o'clock. It'll be, I think, after the LSU game on Saturday night. So I'm thinking that's around 7:30, 8-ish. 92.9 The Game, we're going to definitely post up on social media so that you guys don't forget. But listen, family, you've been awesome to us and for us for this last year and a half. We appreciate you. And listen, we're going to be back here every Tuesday at 4, no question. But we need you to make that pit stop and tell a friend to make that pit stop at 92.9 The Game come Saturday. So anyway, Jarvis has a job to go do. He's got to get on the road and he's got to get going. And don't judge me, but I got a job to do. I got to go find some cake and some cupcakes because I deserve cake and cupcakes because that's what I do.
Yeah, it's so hard to follow that up, T. But yeah, you all don't forget we're big time now. Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. All you gotta do, y'all know what to do with YouTube. Go subscribe. Go do that, and befriend us on Fill in the Blanks on Facebook. And go download our podcast, Google Podcasts and Spotify. Like we don't have that.
If you Jarvis, if they do that, then when they're standing in line to vote, then they have something to entertain them. All right?
Can go and catch up on all the shows while you're standing in line to vote.
Yep, exactly, because you're probably going to be able to catch up on every single one of them. But don't lose hope. Stay the course. Keep it moving and bring a friend to vote. And then come next Tuesday, we'll talk about the show from Saturday, how things went. We'll talk about our voting experiences because hopefully I'll get a chance to go vote in person next week and tell you guys all about it. For Jarvis Davis, I'm Tenitra Batiste. This is Fill in the Blanks. Be safe, people.